What if the secret poison of your unhappiness is not what you lack, but what you measure yourself against? Arthur Schopenhauer believed that envy is one of the most corrosive forces in human life. Not because it creates suffering from nothing, but because it corrupts even the joy we already possess. Envy turns blessings into burdens, peace into restlessness, and satisfaction into longing. The trap of comparison distorts perception, pulling us away from reality and pushing us deeper into misery. Imagine this: you feel content with your modest home. It shelters you, comforts you, and fits your needs. But the moment you step into someone else's grander house, your peace evaporates. The walls that once felt protective suddenly feel narrow. Nothing has changed except the comparison. Or think of achievement. You feel proud of your hard work until you hear of someone younger, seemingly less experienced, surpassing your efforts with ease. Your pride crumbles. What you have accomplished still stands, yet envy steals its sweetness. Even beauty is not immune. You may look in the mirror with quiet confidence until one glance at another face leaves you questioning your worth. Comparison poisons the mind, not because reality has changed, but because your gaze has shifted. Schopenhauer warned that envy feeds on illusions. It whispers that others live freer, happier, more fulfilled lives. But what we perceive in others is only surface. Behind every smile hides silent struggle, behind every triumph, untold sacrifices. Yet envy convinces us that others walk unburdened while we alone carry weight. This blindness keeps us restless. In truth, everyone is bound by the will, the ceaseless hunger that breeds longing, fear, and dissatisfaction. No one escapes suffering. But comparison makes us forget this universal truth. We trade reality for fantasy and gratitude for bitterness. The problem runs deeper than possessions or success. Envy erodes identity itself. When we measure our worth against others, we surrender freedom. Our sense of self becomes dependent on shifting fortunes we cannot control. The victories of others diminish us, their failures become our secret consolation. This is not strength but slavery. Our worth should rise from within, but envy ties it to fragile comparisons. For every person you surpass, there will always be another to surpass you. The race has no finish line, only exhaustion. In Schopenhauer's time, envy grew from neighbors, acquaintances, and colleagues. Today, it is magnified to an unbearable scale. Social media floods us with curated images of seemingly perfect lives. Each scroll becomes a silent competition. Each photo is a mirror against which we measure our own reflection. We are not only comparing ourselves to friends or coworkers, but to thousands of strangers presenting carefully crafted highlights. And so we spiral, jealous of fragments, blind to reality, chained to illusions. This endless exposure feeds a culture where peace of mind feels almost unreachable. Think about the hours lost to this cycle. You could be enjoying a quiet moment, savoring what is before you. But instead, you scroll, measuring yourself against a stranger's snapshot. That envy plants seeds of dissatisfaction that grow into restlessness, leaving you drained. It does not matter if your own life is stable or even abundant. In comparison, it will always feel lacking. The trap of comparison ensures you never feel enough. And here lies the paradox Schopenhauer understood: the more we compare, the less clearly we see ourselves. The more we measure, the less we live. Life becomes not what we truly experience, but how our experiences rank against others. Envy consumes presence. It steals joy not only from what we have, but also from what we might have cherished. It destroys gratitude at its root. Left unchecked, it devours every corner of life, leaving only a restless hunger that nothing can satisfy. Schopenhauer believed the escape begins with recognition. The world conditions us to see life as a contest, to measure constantly, to race endlessly. But this competition is an illusion, one crafted by the will to keep us chasing and suffering. When we recognize that life is not a contest, but a personal journey, comparison loses its grip. By seeing envy as deception, we weaken it. And in that clarity, the first path toward freedom opens. A path where worth is no longer borrowed from others, but discovered within. A path where peace of mind returns not by gaining more, but by refusing to measure at all. If the trap of comparison steals our peace of mind, how do we begin to loosen its grip? Schopenhauer suggested that the first step is to see envy for what it truly is, an illusion built from fragments of other people's lives. What we envy is never the whole truth, only a surface. To remember this is to weaken envy's hold. But to move beyond it, we must also understand the deeper roots of comparison and how to resist them in daily life. The will, Schopenhauer believed, thrives on competition. It is not enough for the will to desire, it demands to desire more than others. Envy, then, is not just a personal weakness, but a function of the restless will itself. When we compare ourselves to others, the will grows stronger. It keeps us trapped by whispering, "You will only be complete when you surpass them." And yet the moment one rival is surpassed, another appears. This endless pursuit is how the will ensures its power over us. Modern society amplifies this struggle. We live in economies built on competition, where value is often measured not by intrinsic worth but by relative standing. Advertisements exploit this by promising not just satisfaction, but superiority. Be better, have more, outshine the rest. Social media adds another layer, a stage where everyone performs, where the highlight reel of others' lives becomes our silent torment. Each scroll fuels the will's hunger. Each comparison deepens dissatisfaction. To resist this, Schopenhauer pointed towards solitude and reflection. In solitude, the noise of competition fades. When we step away from constant exposure to others, we can begin to see ourselves more clearly. Alone, we are not measured against anyone, we simply exist. This is why Schopenhauer valued quiet contemplation. It weakens envy by pulling us out of the endless cycle of measurement. Another remedy is gratitude, not the shallow practice of listing blessings, but the deep awareness that what we have is fragile, fleeting, and therefore precious. Envy tells us to look at what others possess. Gratitude turns our gaze inward to recognize what is already here. Gratitude, when practiced sincerely, interrupts the will's demand for more. It silences comparison by shifting focus from lack to presence. Compassion also plays a role. Envy thrives on the illusion that others live without suffering. But when we look closely, when we imagine the unseen struggles behind another's life, envy softens. Compassion replaces rivalry with connection. Instead of longing for what they have, we recognize the weight they carry. Schopenhauer argued that compassion is the highest form of morality because it arises from the recognition that suffering is universal. In compassion, envy loses its foundation. We no longer see life as a contest but as a shared burden. Yet perhaps the most powerful antidote to comparison is the realization that envy can never be satisfied. The more we indulge it, the stronger it becomes. To see this truth clearly is to begin breaking the cycle. Each time we notice ourselves comparing, we can pause. Each time envy rises, we can question it. Will this comparison bring peace, or will it deepen my restlessness? This awareness does not destroy envy overnight, but it weakens its power. Slowly, the grip loosens. Imagine standing before a mirror. Behind you is a window through which countless lives are visible, each one brighter, richer, or seemingly more fulfilled than yours. Envy wants you to turn toward the window, to measure endlessly. But freedom begins when you turn back to the mirror, when you see yourself as you are, unmeasured, unranked. That reflection may not be perfect, but it is real. And in its reality lies the first taste of peace. Schopenhauer's wisdom is not that we can eliminate envy completely, but that by recognizing it as illusion, by retreating into solitude, practicing gratitude, and cultivating compassion, we can loosen its hold. Life remains difficult, but without comparison, its burdens are lighter. We are no longer running a race against others, we are walking our own path, at our own pace. And on that path, peace of mind begins to return. If envy is a poison, then the final step of Schopenhauer's wisdom is to recognize how to live without drinking it daily. To do this, we must reimagine what it means to live well, not as a contest, but as an honest encounter with existence itself. Envy shrinks the soul by making life about others' measures. Freedom expands it by turning life inward, toward clarity, compassion, and presence. When we finally stop competing, we begin to live. Schopenhauer taught that the endless cycle of comparison arises from the will's restless nature. The will does not simply crave food, shelter, or love, it craves superiority. It insists that worth is always relative. I am only happy if I have more, achieve more, am seen as more. But once we step back, we see the futility. Even the wealthiest, most powerful, most admired people are haunted by comparison. Their riches magnify envy, their fame feeds restlessness. To pursue superiority is to chain yourself to a race without a finish line. Freedom begins with breaking this chain. Schopenhauer admired solitude because it dissolves the illusion of competition. Alone, there is no audience to impress, no rival to defeat. Alone, we see ourselves not as better or worse, but simply as being. In solitude, the endless measuring fades, and a deeper peace becomes possible. Many fear solitude because it strips away distraction, but in that stillness lies truth. You are not your comparisons. You are not defined by being ahead or behind. You are simply here, alive. Another path to freedom is embracing art and contemplation. Schopenhauer argued that in moments of aesthetic experience, whether listening to music, contemplating a painting, or watching the sun sink behind the horizon, the will falls silent. For those moments, envy has no foothold. You are not measuring, you are beholding. Beauty interrupts comparison. It turns attention away from what others have and into direct contact with reality as it is. And in that contact, envy loses its power. Compassion further dissolves envy's grip. To see others not as rivals but as fellow sufferers changes the game entirely. When we recognize that every person we envy carries hidden struggles, our bitterness transforms. Their success does not diminish us, their suffering connects us. Compassion builds bridges where comparison builds walls. It allows us to coexist rather than compete, to share rather than envy. Schopenhauer saw compassion as the highest moral truth because it counters the will's egoistic hunger. And in compassion, we rediscover peace. Gratitude seals this transformation. Not shallow gratitude that denies pain, but deep gratitude that sees life clearly. Even in suffering, there are moments worth cherishing, a kind word, a breath of fresh air, the warmth of a hand in yours. Gratitude does not erase comparison overnight, but it anchors us in what is real rather than what is imagined. The more we practice it, the less room envy has to grow. But perhaps the most radical insight is this: envy loses its grip when we accept the limits of existence. Life was never meant to be a contest of infinite growth, endless accumulation, or perfect satisfaction. These are illusions, and illusions breed envy. Once we accept that happiness is fleeting, that suffering is universal, and that no one escapes the restlessness of the will, comparison begins to look absurd. Why measure endlessly when everyone is subject to the same law? Why envy when the object of envy is just as restless, just as fragile, just as mortal? The paradox of pessimism is that by seeing life as it truly is, fragile, imperfect, restless, we gain the strength to live it more peacefully. Schopenhauer's wisdom is not a call to despair, but to honesty. And in that honesty lies freedom. Freedom from the poison of envy, freedom from the trap of comparison, freedom to live without constantly measuring. To see clearly is to step off the racetrack and walk your own path. On that path, peace of mind, though fragile, is possible. So the question becomes, will you continue to measure your life against the shifting fortunes of others, or will you turn inward, embrace solitude, practice compassion, and live with gratitude? The choice is yours. Envy destroys peace of mind. But clarity, humility, and presence can restore it. Schopenhauer's truth remains: the trap of comparison is strong, but freedom is stronger.